Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Maureen Dumas, and I'm the Vice President of Advancement here at Johnson & Wales University. Thank you for joining us for the Alumni Executives in the Food Space Discuss Innovation and Evolution. We are thrilled to bring you this program in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the College of Food, Innovation, and Technology, featuring outstanding alumni from the college who have risen through the ranks of their respective companies and now are among the key decision makers at their organizations. We are grateful they have taken the time to be with us to share their experiences and expertise and to answer your questions. Questions can be submitted throughout the session using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. These questions will be posed to our panelists at the conclusion of our discussion. I'd now like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Jason Evans, Dean of the College of Food, Innovation, and Technology. In this role, Dr. Evans oversees a faculty of 60 full-time instructors and professors serving nearly 1,600 students. The college offers baccalaureate and graduate programming in culinary arts, culinary science, culinary nutrition, food and beverage entrepreneurship, and sustainable food systems. Formerly, Dr. Evans was an associate professor of agricultural business management at the State University of New York's College of Agriculture and Technology, SUNY Cobleskill. He served as the director of the Institute for Rural Vitality and chair of the Department of Agriculture and Food Management. Before joining the SUNY Cobleskill faculty in 2009, Dr. Evans was an assistant research professor at West Virginia University, where he earned a Ph.D. in natural resource economics in 2007. At SUNY Cobleskill, Dr. Evans taught a variety of courses in agricultural economics, agricultural policy, marketing, and more. In his role with the college's Institute for Rural Vitality, he oversaw the operations of the Mohawk Valley Farm and Food Business Incubator and coordinated Startup New York economic development programming and worked closely with regional and local partners to meet community and economic development needs. Dr. Evans served on agricultural advisory committees for Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and U.S. Representative Antonio Delgado, and was a longtime member of the board of directors for the Shoshari County Community Action Program and Shoshari Area Long-Term Development. Jason was raised on a beef, cattle, and hay operation in southern West Virginia. Please join me in welcoming my friend, Dr. Jason Evans.
Thank you very much, Maureen, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm proud to be joined by our esteemed panelists, whom I'll now introduce for you. First, we are so pleased to have with us Nancy Fuentes, class of 2011. Nancy is co-owner of Gloria's Latin Cuisine, the leading Salvadoran and Tex-Mex restaurant in Texas. She leverages a wide range of culinary and restaurant experience in planning the future of the restaurant brand. Before her current role, Fuentes served as the research and development chef for Gloria's, and she also worked as a line cook for FT33 and Stephen Piles. Nancy received her Bachelor of Science in Culinary Arts from Johnson & Wales, and while attending JWU, served as an assistant to the then special events chef and our current assistant dean, TJ Deladon. In her spare time, Nancy serves on the board of St. Jude's Research Hospital. And in addition, she enjoys being a new mother, spending time with her family, cooking, traveling, and her 5 dogs. Second, I'm pleased to welcome Michael Levine, class of 2012, an innovative food entrepreneur and chef, dynamic in his approach to food solutions, and incredibly passionate about working with kids and millennials to fulfill a vision to drive healthy and sustainable change in the food industry. He was born and raised in Long Island and holds degrees in culinary arts and food service management and entrepreneurship from Johnson & Wales. Actually, while completing his education at Johnson & Wales, Michael founded Global Food Solutions, which develops food products and brands for the food service and school food service industries, and Linecore Distribution Solutions, which provides scalable third-party logistics and distribution services. His work focuses on developing healthy, sustainable food products for the food service industry aimed at supporting local producers to maintain fresh, nutritious foods, while remaining dedicated to community building in regions where his companies operate. Michael has developed and launched more than 7 category-specific brands and more than 400 products in the food service and school food service industries. The result is feeding tens of millions of students in schools per year, while also providing meals to those in need through government assistance programs, healthcare operations, and the U.S. military. Michael, as you might imagine, is an outspoken supporter of providing meals to school kids across the United States and is actively involved with various childhood hunger organizations, supporting No Kid Hungry and Be Strong, a national nonprofit aimed at bullying resiliency. Michael, welcome to the panel. And finally, Houston Striggow, class of 1979, graduated from the School of Hospitality Business at Michigan State University in 1975. And after a 2-year stint with Victoria Station Restaurants, he enrolled at JWU's Culinary Arts program, where he finished in 1979. Houston worked in Connecticut from 1980 until 1992, and in that time formed a restaurant company called Entertaining Moments Incorporated, opened a total of 9 restaurants in Connecticut and Florida. Until 2000, Houston worked for a wide range of restaurant groups, including 2 tours with the House of Blues, where he opened venues around the country as a general manager and later general manager of new openings. President of Murray Linder's Cafe Nova and vice president of Larium LLC, a San Francisco entertainment and hospitality development company. From 2001 to 2004, he and his partner Susan ran an award-winning 100-seat French Mediterranean bistro in Northwest Portland, Oregon. And since 2005, he's been involved in the development and expansion of Susiecakes Bakeries, which his partner Sarah founded. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why I called her Sarah, given the name of the company, which his partner Susan founded. And there are currently 27 locations throughout California and Texas. So now that all of you have entirely shown me up on your resumes and short bios, we will get to the questions. And actually, I wanted to take a moment to say, reading bios like that of JWU alums makes me so incredibly proud to be part of this organization. And we have so many success stories like all of you, and we're so pleased that you can join us and share your insights and expertise with us and other alums. So now that we've learned a little bit about you, we've got some time to go through some questions. And I'd like to start with asking you how you got where you got in your career. So what were those key moments, those key things that happened to get you where you are? And if you picked up an important life lesson along the way, we'd appreciate you sharing that. So I'll start with Michael on that question.
Yeah. So I think, for us, something that's been very interesting in kind of how we go about the approach is, I think at times in my career and in our development, we've taken a lot of risk. And I think the most important thing I learned about kind of the process and, how we started and how we approach that risk and what it looks like for us is, I think it's really interesting how there's a deep perception often that people think somebody is kind of an expert in something, right? Or somebody's very skilled in a certain area. And of course, that applies from a very technical skill set and maybe chemistry or something of that nature. But as a whole, I think there's a misconception that, often we're all learning as we go. And I think often we're looking at certain people in certain roles and thinking they know the answer to everything and they're an expert at everything. And, the reality is, even people like myself, I'm consistently learning and changing and trying new things every single day. And some of those things work really, really well. And some of those things don't work really, really well. And I think it's through that, calculation and risk-taking process and approach that you're able to really look and kind of understand and change your perception a little bit in terms of how you want to approach different things and where you're headed, with your career and future. And I think a lot of times people just get really caught up in it, as opposed to just kind of evaluating it and, taking small leaps of faith and trying things and trying to understand as they go and seeing where they end up. Because often I think it yields a far better outcome than not making a decision at all. I don't view business as there's a good decision and a bad decision. I think there's just indecision. It's either you're going forward or you're going sideways. I don't think it's fair to, everybody wants to think it's kind of forward and back. And I view it as it's forward and sideways because maybe it may not be the outcome you want, but you certainly can step back and learn something. And for myself, I think that's been something very, very important to kind of understand and digest and utilize as a tool now that I recognize it to help grow.
That's great. Houston, same question.
I kind of echo a lot of what Michael said. It's for myself, I made a conscious decision years ago to stay on the food side of the business, not going into hotels or cruise ships or whatever. I was always intrigued by the restaurant business in general. And so one of my life's lessons was I was able to get very focused on a certain discipline and make that kind of my specialty of sorts. And then along the way, what I've always done, and at the advice of some mentors of mine through the years, is always to seek out opportunities, raise your hand, volunteer, come in early, stay late, work hard. There's always going to be somebody who's smarter than you are, but my position has always been nobody's ever going to outwork me. So I'm going to work harder than anybody else in case I don't have that skill set. The other thing that I've learned is that early on in my career, I learned that I was more of a generalist than a specialist. And I could think of things in general terms and not necessarily in specifics, or I would have a specific skill. So from a team building perspective, what I always look for is to find people who were specialists at certain things, whether, it was a certain type of cook or chef we were after, or a certain type of baker, or an HR specialist, or somebody in technology or IT, because that's part of, kind of the team building. And then, the other thing is, to always kind of adopt a position of being a student and never stop learning. Always research, always learn, don't stop. Because this is a younger, faster, stronger, smarter is something I've always kind of subscribed to, because this is a very challenging business. Not a lot of pensions in this business. So if you can stay young, stay focused, continue to learn, you'll go much further.
Excellent. Nancy.
I have to take it to my parents. My parents came here as immigrants, as refugees during the Salvadorian War. And so they came here with the mentality of survival mode. And so that's where I feel like I captivated that. I grabbed a hold on to that, and that's how I got to where I am. Learning from my parents, and they started this company 36 years ago, and let me tell you, they didn't have a high school degree, they didn't have a college degree. It's all been trial and error. And that's where my parents have instilled in me that you can fail as many times as you have, or you can, or make as many mistakes as you can. And what matters the most is how you pick yourself up and you continue to move forward. Like what Michael said, you don't go back. You can go sideways, you can step aside and take a deep breath, but you continue to go forward. And so I think that's grabbing that from my parents has really helped me to get to where I am. Because yes, while I learned a lot at JWU, there's a lot of things that I learned right in the middle of things, in the middle of construction, and I just grew. And I asked questions. I wasn't afraid to feel embarrassed. I wasn't afraid that I was the one that didn't know anything. I asked questions. And that's something that my dad also taught me. Surround yourself with smart people, because they will teach you, they will help you, and they will guide you. And so I got to give it to my parents. The reason why I am where I am, or how I got here, is because of them.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. And I'm super lucky myself to be surrounded here at JWU and CFIT by incredibly smart people who are really, really good at what they do, which means I don't necessarily have to be good at what they do. So the last 2.5 years have been challenging in a number of ways for everyone. I mean, so many pieces and parts of our culture and our social fabric have changed, but certainly things have changed for businesses and in the larger economy. So from your own business's perspective, can you talk to us a bit about how your business evolved and how your approach has shifted in light of the pandemic and everything that it brought with it over the last 2.5 years? So I actually start with Nancy on that question.
So pre-pandemic, it's funny because my parents have always believed in the best way to get your place recommended is by word of mouth. You know that you can rely on your friend's word to say, oh my God, this restaurant is so good, it's so delicious. So we never really did advertisement. We never really wanted to promote ourselves on the radio or flyers or anything like that. So when the pandemic happened, we had to shift that. And we definitely had to go that route of advertisement and say, hey, look, we're doing to-go orders, we're doing call-ins, we're doing curbside. We definitely did a lot of WhatsApp videos on how to train our staff on how to package, on how to do things across all of our 20 at the time locations across the state of Texas. So it's a lot of things that we had to adapt to, keyword adapt, and a lot of things that we had to be bendable with. You have to just have to be able to pick up and go, because they're going to have new things come at you in this industry, and you just have to adapt to them. And that's what COVID did to us. And for us to not stay back, we had to follow what we needed to do. And that was either videos, Facebook posts, Instagram posts, training our staff, just move all our POS stations to the front of the restaurant because we're not using the dining room, and just do teams of curbside delivery and then teams of DoorDash. We just had to figure things out. And we really had to not have our racehorse blinders on, but have an open wide view of what things we had to do.
Just out of curiosity and a quick follow-up to that, Nancy, has your in-person dining volume now returned to pre-pandemic levels?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, actually, and I can only say this because God has really helped us out with this. Our sales have increased every year. So it's been incredible. It's been crazy. I think definitely customers really missed that person-to-person contact, that face-to-face contact. And we love seeing that. Now, the only thing that I'm worried about, or that I've seen in other places, is that the customer service key is missing in other places. And that's where we try to push really hard right now, is pay attention to your customers. The moment that your guests walk in the restaurant, from the hostess saying hello, greeting with a huge smile because they're happy to be there, to when they're seated at the table and we have our waiters or busboys serving chips and salsa, and then our waiters saying hello, greeting them. And when they're done as well, leaving the restaurant, the hostess is that last person that sees them. You want to pay attention to them. You want to give them that attention all around.
Great. Houston, the same question, how your business has adapted over the last couple of years.
Thanks, Jason. It's remarkable that it's been 30 months since the start of COVID. I can remember, I think it was March 20th, never thought we would ever have to be in a position to do this. And we completely shut down our business, all 26 locations at the time. And about 2 weeks later, we had to lay off 500 employees just to be able to survive. And in my wildest dreams, nobody ever prepared us for that decision. I don't think we ever thought about it in some, senior class at Michigan State or in a class at JWU. I mean, it was like, you never envisioned that happening. And then, the process then began. I mean, we were scheduled a $50 million company that year. And in the 12 months that followed COVID, our sales crashed down to about 25 million. And that's a big, big change in things. The thing that changed for us, we're obviously in a very personalized guest-facing business. Our motto or our mission is connecting through celebration. It just happens to be that we sell cakes as 65% of our business, but it's really about celebration and everybody's celebratory events in life, whether it's birthdays, anniversaries, whatever it is that you're celebrating. So we were always in this face-to-face business when, Nancy would come in or Michael or Jason would come in and establish a one-on-one relationship. And, it's your child's birthday, it's the 5th birthday, what do they want deco on the cake? We had to completely shift. We used to do about 10 to 15% of our business online pre-order. We now do 65 to 70% of it is now pre-order. And that was a major, major switch. The other thing was, currently we have about 350 employees. So we've hired 70% of our team back. We have no idea where the other 30% are. We have no lack of demand in our business. It's a lack of supply on our end, just because of the fact that we don't have enough team members to stay open as late as we used to. We open about the same time as we used to. And we still have one location that 30 months after it closed, it still has not reopened. It's in downtown San Francisco. So, the other big change was availability of talent. And then the talent that you did find available, what their skill set was. And what we're facing now is spending a lot more on development and training of personnel because they're not coming to us with the same skill set that they used to.
Interesting. Okay. Michael, I'm sure that there are a number of pieces of your business that changed pretty drastically. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so for us, it was definitely a very interesting time. Something very specific to kind of our business and the way we approach it. So I do a lot of just-in-time inventory and production, meaning while we have a tremendous amount of products under our brands coming from a variety of co-packers and some of our own manufacturing, we really work to produce just-in-time inventories, which allows us as a business to keep our cash flows very healthy and keep inventory levels low, right? Food is it's always on a clock. It's always every day after production is getting closer to expiration, and you want to get it through that supply chain and into those customers' hands. So for us, we actually started to follow kind of what was going on, and we had always done different contracts with FEMA and the Red Cross and national disasters and all sorts of things. And we were a little naive at the time, thinking, hey, it might be something similar. And, we thought we were going to start producing some meal kits and do some different things that we had done for other kind of situations that we thought it may look like at the time. And ironically, we went out, we stopped a lot of production on products a couple of weeks early. And it was almost a very interesting position that I had stopped all the production of current products, started scaling up meal kits and things I thought were going to be in high demand for emergency relief. And we were actually a little bit too early because we had started to reach out to a variety of customers and, different school programs and things and say, hey, we're not liking what we're seeing in the situation. We don't really know what's going to happen, but we think that things like this may be of use to you. And at the time, we had a lot of customers turn around and say to us, you're trying to profiteer off of fear, because at that time, nothing in the US was closed. None of the schools were closed. And about a week later, it kind of really went boom. And, of course, everything that's happened, as we all know. But I think the number one takeaway that I've learned the last, 2 to 3 years and more than anything else is that today things are changing much faster than they ever have. And I don't think that we're going to go back to the way things were before. And, for us, a great example of that is, I think technology and access for all kinds of businesses, whether you're a restaurant, whether you're a food manufacturer, really anybody in the food supply chain. When I started the company over 10 years ago, it was really focused on the fact that, you know, you had to have a lot of money to have the right kind of tools and support and, you know, things that you wanted to do with the business. You know, I remember I didn't have an accounting software, you know, I didn't have invoicing. I had, you know, kind of all these piecemeal solutions and things. And, you know, with the changes that have gone on, specifically with COVID, I think a lot of the changes in the market and the barriers to entry have changed quite drastically. And, you know, I know for somebody like us in the past, we used to maybe look at different kinds of software and, you know, maybe we need these kind of tools, whether it's, you know, for our own employees or maybe it's for my own external network or something. And, you know, through kind of COVID and all the changes, I found that you no longer can basically, hey, we want to review this kind of thing and maybe implement it and have this huge amount of time, right, to kind of get it in place. You have to move a little faster now. The solutions are much cheaper. There's a lot of free options and things, and it allows you to really test and try and, you know, launch things. And if you don't like it, you know, you change around and you do something. And it really made it kind of interesting. So I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways from COVID is that, you know, things will continue to evolve at this newer, much more rapid pace. And the barriers to entry in a lot of ways for all kinds of businesses have been lowered. And it allows you to test, try, and do new things. And I know for us, we have implemented probably 6, 7, 8 different, you know, new solutions, both internally for my employees, whether it be, you know, health and safety and certain protocols like that, or whether it be, you know, more autonomous routing systems, you know, using predictive analytics and things to make sure that we're routing and, you know, both shipping and receiving our goods timely. Because for us, we saw such an incredible surge in demand in emergency relief meals that we were producing for, you know, the Javits Center Hospital in New York, or the ship that was docked in New York, and, you know, major school programs. So I think people always need to be thinking about that growth and that change and that movement, and looking towards, you know, where they want to be in the future and working to get there, and not think that they have to be this big company or have to have all these different solutions. You know, the same tools that were once only for companies that were $50, $100 million are now available to, you know, companies that don't have a dollar to spend on software and can launch these new solutions. And, you know, I think for us, that was one of the biggest takeaways is, you know, keep moving fast, and, you know, you'll be in a much better position than if you want to spend so much time trying to articulate everything perfectly. You know,
that's a really important point. And it's actually palpable in our student population, this sense that barriers to entry have come down in a number of ways, and that their dreams and goals for entrepreneurship are maybe more accessible than they would have been for college students 10 years ago. That's a really important point. So something else that has changed, of course, in the last few years, and probably exacerbated by sort of the cultural implications of the pandemic, have been challenges related to labor and workforce attitudes. So what challenges are you currently facing with labor or worker attitudes? And how do you see those challenges playing out in the future? Houston, I'll start with you.
You know, I would tell you that, you know, attitudes are one thing. I think overall availability is the bigger question. I think we've seen a shift of people out of the hospitality business, unfortunately. A lot of it was driven early during the pandemic, because if you were a server or a cook and your restaurant was shut down and you didn't have work, but you actually wanted to work, you actually didn't want to continue or to accept a check from the government, for example, but you couldn't find work. So like in San Francisco, I think they've said about 200, I don't know what the number is, but this huge number of people have left the city who used to work in our industry. And they're, you know, like Michael said earlier, we're not going back to what was. They've permanently left the workforce. So I think a lot of people went to work for Amazon driving trucks, stocking shelves at the grocery market, whatever, because we weren't in a position to employ them. And when we started to reemploy people, we found them, but we couldn't find as many as we used to find. I think the other challenge from an attitude perspective is, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, everybody's going to have to answer the question about, how people now approach work versus how they used to approach it, right? People don't want to, let's say, go back to the office. Doesn't apply to us because, what's interesting is all those people who had keyboard jobs didn't want to go back to the office, but they required all of us to continue to work guest facing, right? We didn't have the option not to go back to the office because we still had to serve people, right? So, there's been that shift and we've lost a number of people, even since we've hired people back, to changes in careers where all of a sudden, they can get a job working Monday through Friday from home and not have to come in and work for us, even though we have a pretty good life balance. We just, our typical employee works 40 to maybe 50 hours a week. And that was a conscious decision on our part. But, the life, I read an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday from this executive, and he said, the concept of life balance means I just don't want to work hard, right? And how hard people are willing to work these days, there's been a shift. And 40 hours, that's all I want to give. Okay, got it. Then I'm going to have to adapt my business and hire more people, because if Jason doesn't want to work some overtime, I have to have another employee in the wings to pick up the slack. So I think it's more availability, but availability and attitude kind of run neck and neck here.
Sure. Nancy, what are you seeing?
I am seeing very much the same thing as Houston is. It's hard because in the restaurant industry, you have a lot of waiters, you have a lot of bartenders, you have a lot of busboys, you have a lot of job positions that are requiring a lot of hands-on work, a lot of hard work. And so, yes, you have the issues with availability, but you also have that issue of attitude where people just don't want to work. And so you see nowadays, people making TikTok videos and they think that it's that easy. But when you start a business, it's not all sunshines and rainbows like a TikTok video shows. It's a lot of your sweat. It's a lot of your blood. It's a lot of your sleepless nights. And that's what running a business is like. And so you want to be a part of this dream. Roll up your sleeves and have fun with it, because it's going to be an awesome ride, very fulfilling ride. But yeah, it takes a lot of work. And on top of that, you have the people that don't want to work as many hours, or they just don't want to put in too much physical work. You also have that mentality of, you go to a Starbucks, and people who are listening can probably, think in their head, relate. How many times have you gone to a Starbucks and the lady's checking you out? It's just like, hey, how's it going? What do you want? That's it. Where's the customer service? Where did it go? I mean, pre-pandemic, everybody was so nice. Everybody had the Southern hospitality. How you doing? Can I get the door for you? And now all of a sudden it's lost. And it saddens me, because the places that I used to love going, they're not like that anymore. It's not that homey feeling. It's not that comforting feeling anymore. So you're running into that attitude as well of, it's just dry, basic dry. I don't want to be here. Or that mentality of, I've clocked out. And it's just, but you're in a position where you can't clock out. You have to be happy.
I think it's going to take us actually some time to understand all of these cultural undercurrents, because they're going to play out over a series of years. But no question, research is suggesting pretty frequently now that it's not just the people with disassociating work from incentives, sort of not trusting that link between work and an incentive is there, that I can't trust that if I work hard that I'll actually get where I want to get, that's broken a little bit. And also this sense that, and I don't know if you would call this entitlement or not, but that when I get into a system there's a very quick route for promotion and advancement, and that I can talk to the boss and get where I need to be.
Mhm.
Do any of those, or any of what Nancy and Houston said, Michael, ring sort of relevant to you in your business?
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting because for us, we continue to hire very, very rapidly as we continue to expand. And I think one of the most interesting things that we're noticing is, I keep seeing a lot of different resumes in the last couple of months. So in the last 6, 7 months, we've hired about 35 employees or so. We plan to hire about another 50 to 75 employees over the next 2 years at a minimum. And for us, one of my biggest concerns right now is I continue to see a lot of resumes that are, through COVID and through some of the changes and everything that's gone on, I think as everybody else touched on, there's a lot of ways now that people can, make money for themselves, right? And, we're living in a new kind of economy where, whether you're doing DoorDash or whether you're doing Uber, you're making TikTok videos and all these things. I mean, I have a ton of friends that left the corporate world and make more money doing TikTok videos than they made in their corporate jobs. And I personally don't understand it, but numbers don't lie at the end of the day. And, for me, one of my biggest concerns is I see a lot of these very talented people that continue to job hop. And I think it's a great thing to have tons of different diverse backgrounds and experience. I think that's phenomenal. But what concerns me is the frequency of the job hopping is certainly not like it used to be. When I was coming out of college, it was kind of like if you wanted to move around, there's like this perception almost that it was, 18, 24-month kind of thing before you should maybe be considering kind of job hopping. And, now even internally, we're seeing some people that kind of are hopping jobs, in that 6-month mark. And, there seems to be this culture that continues to be talked about that, everybody wants to move, and the word toxic seems to get used a lot. And, I find it very interesting because unfortunately, I've been in some of those very unfortunate toxic workplaces, whether it's back of the house kitchen where chefs are throwing plates and, doing things they're not supposed to, or, now more in the manufacturing side, people really screaming on loading docks and, doing things that are truly indicative of toxic culture or workplace. And I think employees across the board need to kind of understand that it's not toxic. I think what they're trying to express more than anything else is that businesses, especially small businesses, are not toxic. They're just inefficient. And I think it's very easy to be, somebody very specific on some kind of inefficiency in a business that maybe it doesn't agree with you. But when you look at the big picture of having, hundreds of employees, it's a very tough decision, right? It's very similar for all of us in food, right? You're trying to make something that tastes great to this incredibly diverse background. And sometimes, 99 out of 100 may love something. Sometimes 50 out of 100 may love something. And I think there's a lot of progression that, we're going to start to see the next couple of years because so much changing has gone on that I think there needs to be some sort of, not necessarily a reset, I don't think that's the fair word to use, but some kind of just slight step back and evaluation and say, I think that a lot of employers are doing a great job. And the fact that people have had to battle the things that we've had to battle with, forced government shutdowns and things of that nature have made it incredibly challenging on business owners, incredibly stressful on business owners, right? At the end of the day, they know they have to make the decisions. So I think that's something that's kind of going on as an undercurrent in the, hiring employee workplace. And, one of the big things that I think also ties into it is, a couple of years ago, I remember that employees would, come to me when they had a problem, come to people on the team when they didn't maybe agree with something, or, they didn't like something maybe, or it didn't jive with them. And, now it almost seems more like, because there was so much demand for all kinds of jobs just so immediately, and that shift and change, that people don't want to have those hard conversations or, feel even the slightest bit of uncomfortable. It's just kind of like, oh, I'm just going to go get another job over here. I'm kind of on to the next thing. And, I don't think that outcome is great for that employee at the end of the day. I mean, it's certainly not great for the business as well. But I think it makes for an interesting kind of longer term projection there in terms of, what that looks like and what the relationship looks like back and forth into the future with the amount of job hopping and these kind of things.
Sure.
But I do think the employees as a whole have learned that they can pick up a lot of skills in a lot of different ways as well. And I think that's a great benefit to, business owners as well. So I do think there's a counterbalance there. But it's certainly very interesting dynamic how it continues to play out, more so now than I think we've all ever seen.
So Houston.
Yeah, Jason, what's interesting is, because both of the other panelists have brought it up, is, the whole idea that a profession is being an influencer, right? I mean, nobody ever thought that would be something that people would aspire to, because generally in the past, when it came to work, it was about making a contribution to the common good in some way, somehow. I was going to be a doctor. I was going to cure people. I was going to be a nurse. I was going to be a business executive and, build a company and create jobs for people and create career paths for people, right? And I think that's where we all kind of come from. And that's what we continue to do as we build our businesses. But, are we going to offer a degree in influencing at some point? I have no idea. But, as Susan already said, the reason she grew Susiecakes was to offer career opportunities for women, right? I mean, how else are you going to do it?
So, and to your point, Michael, about the sort of toxic environment, I think we see that not just in business organizations, but also in education and elsewhere. And that is, if that organization isn't checking an employee's or a student's all of their boxes, then it feels toxic to them. It's not supporting their value system, how they want to work, the way they want to work, the way they want to behave. And so that this economy has created a number of options for them, as you're suggesting, to just jump ship pretty quickly and to find something that gets closer to checking all of their boxes. That's an important observation. So in light of all of that, then, and I asked this question because of the business that I'm in, how do we need to change from an educational institution standpoint, given the changing needs of your business and what you're seeing on the ground? If very quickly, all of you, or briefly, you could address how we might need to change in the approach that we're taking to educating young people so that they're better prepared for this world. Nancy, do you any insight on that?
Being at Johnson & Wales, I learned a lot and I experienced a lot, especially working under Chef TJ Delagon, right? When he was—
Who is listening, by the way.
He is. Hi, TJ. I can hear you're a rock star. I love him so much. I learned so much from him in doing special events, and working with him also brought the opportunity of working the flavor experience and going to host these events, these big events, where you have different chefs wanting to showcase their new product, right? So you have like Superb Farms, their sauces, and you have Land O'Lakes showing their dairy products, right? And then you have their chefs working with all these ingredients and making delicious meals for, I want to say, 3 days, and we're there for a week and a half prepping for all this. So all of that really helped me when it came, hands-on experience really helped me when it came to my restaurant and me having to do big events at my establishments, right? So like on Monday, I had a big buyout at one of our locations in Houston. And I just put my TJ hat on and I just started making these plated hors d'oeuvres and executing everything out. And with my corporate chef, who is now doing the job that I used to do. And I'm calling out these orders. Okay, let's run with the churrascos and chimichurri and doing this. And I learned a lot of that, and I'm very grateful. But something that I wish I would have learned a little bit more at JWU was I remember doing kitchen design in one of our classes, but it wasn't fully, okay, it's a kitchen design, but what about your restaurant design? Okay, where do you want to put your hostess stand? Where do you want your main dining room? Where do you want your bar? Your bar, how do you want your bar laid out? And that's what I do a lot now with my parents when we design restaurants. And we design with our architect and our interior designers. And then during construction, I'm very much in there doing project managing. I have many hats, and I'm looking at everything, and I've learned so much. But I think at the same time, I'm happy that I didn't quite learn all that in detail, because I'm learning it now, hands-on. And that's where I feel for culinary students, nutrition or hotel, that's where we learn the best, is hands-on. And I mean, I'm very grateful for JWU, but I think that's one thing that I wish I would have learned a little bit more on, is designing, not just the kitchen, the line, the hot line, the expo line, but the entire restaurant. Design your restaurant, your concept. How would you want it? Where would you want your bar? How many seats? Your patio, enclosed or not? How would you want that? And then you have your students, okay, think from where the kitchen does it make sense for the traffic flow of your waitstaff to go this way or that way, or really think? I mean, those are questions that we have come up in every design, every layout, every kitchen layout. Do we want the dish pit here, or do we want it here? It's a lot.
So really teaching students to think about what they're doing as a system, that what you do over here is connected to what's happening over here, and there are design implications of that, there are operational implications of that. It's a good suggestion. Houston, anything that you'd like to add in terms of how we could change to better prepare students?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. The first thing I would encourage any educational institution is to hire better, not in terms of faculty, but in terms of student selection, right? To get the more serious-minded student, the student who's more focused and really, they aren't guessing whether or not this is their chosen career, but this is actually what they want to do, right? I mean, we have to do it in the world of business, right? Is to hire better and to find those people who, are really passionate about, hospitality, or, passionate about baking or guest service or decorating or whatever it might be. The other thing is the development of, communication, interpersonal soft skills. One thing to, technical skills, but, in what we find is that so many of the people that we interview and are looking for management opportunities are very introverted. They're not very communicative. They don't like confrontation. They don't know how to have confrontation in a good sense, right? Of being able to sit down with Jason and say, hey, Jason, we got some feedback for you. Here's some things that you're really good at, but here are some things I really need you to work on. Or, I think, Jason, we've kind of come to the end of our road here, that this isn't either a good fit, or, you've done all you can do here, and I encourage you to move on to another opportunity, right? Whatever that is. But, we just find that, people just don't have, they just don't want to talk to anybody. And it's like, you can't do that. I mean, it's a team environment. I mean, you're not just working as one, you're working as a team of, in one of Nancy's kitchens, there could be 20 of team members on. In our bakeries, it could be, 6 or 7 bakers working together, but they've got to be able to have communication skills, just like at Michael's business and manufacturing. It's like, yeah, they're all working on an assembly line, whatever it is, but they still have to be able to communicate. So the soft skill communication skills, and again, I'm not, an education specialist, so I can't tell you how to do it, but I can guarantee you, we would like to be able to see students who graduate, who have more soft skills.
Great. And we hear that so much from employers. And I think every college and university in the country has prioritized figuring out how to do that effectively. Michael, anything to add about a suggestion for the education community?
Yeah, I think from the education perspective, I think kind of what Nancy was talking about has been very interesting too, because I do a lot of that. My background was not it was not in building plants, right? It was in kind of hey, I have a culinary degree and I'm going to make some great product for kids and get it out there. And I certainly had a lot to learn as we kind of scaled up, and plant design and food safety and structural flow of product and logistics and supply chain. And I think from an education perspective, what excites me most is how integrated in ways things are becoming. And the kind of students seem to be much savvier. Like when I went to school, there was not, you couldn't learn things on Instagram or TikTok. YouTube was still pretty new. Influencer wasn't a term yet. And I think all these things, it's not a bad thing, but it's not a good thing either. It's just indifferent. And I think from an education perspective, I think there's a balance between what people think they know and the way they learn it, and maybe what the right way to learn something a little bit more in depth, kind of might be, and where that balance falls. So I think, from that education perspective, it's very interesting to see kind of how it changes. But I think those that, really look to find things that they like to do, right? Like somebody like myself, how did I know I was going to, build a food company and make food for kids and distribute it? I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. That was just, I loved food. I wanted to be in food. I love working in kitchens. I was like, hey, I want to go to Johnson & Wales. And then from there, it was like, hey, I want to learn different things and, touch and feel and go through that, kind of trial and error process where, as I said earlier, to me, it's not, good or bad. It's just, good or sideways. And, I think that the education community can adopt a little bit more of that philosophy where there's nothing bad that we could teach these kids. They may not love it, or they may not feel it's like that perfect pinpoint connection. But, I thought that when I was in Johnson & Wales and I learned certain things, and, here I am 10, 12 years later, and some of those things that I maybe thought weren't so important really have come full circle. And I was like, wow, I'm pretty glad, in hindsight, I'm like, I'm pretty glad I learned that. And I'm pretty glad somebody pushed me in that direction from an education perspective. And, that really helped me.
That's a really good way to put that, by the way, is that it's never bad to learn anything. And we often describe that as learning for the sake of learning, which may ultimately transition to you learn that for the sake of doing.
Exactly.
I think it's incredibly important. Those are all excellent. I appreciate that. And so before we get to our final question, probably our final question to our audience, if you haven't already, please submit your questions to our panelists in the Q&A box, and we'll get to those right after those questions. So use Q&A if you have something for the panel. But before we get to those, just one quick question here. And I'm really curious as to what your response might be to this one. If you were able to go back to your days as a college student at Johnson & Wales, there's two parts to this question. Is there something you wish you would have known about the world? And secondly, is there something you're glad you did not know? So, Houston.
That is a loaded question. I've always said to myself that, I don't live life regretting anything in terms of any decision I've ever made at any time. May not have been the right decision, but I made the decision, right? And I wouldn't be here today if I had made any other change along my journey. If I had done one thing different, I wouldn't be sitting here at this panel. I may not have attended JNW. And, when I attended Johnson & Wales, it was obviously almost kind of like a graduate degree for me because I'd already gone through Michigan State, had 4 years of education, went to Johnson & Wales, not to be a great chef. I went there to learn about food, but also an appreciation of who a chef is, right? Because a mentor of mine said, Houston, you're going to be in the restaurant business your entire life. I want to make sure you can relate to those people who make it happen, which is in the kitchen. And that's why I went to culinary school. My takeaways were immense. And some things that you learned back then, you wondered when you were going to apply them, but you applied different learnings at different times in your life. And so I don't, is there something I wish it sounds like a country song almost, right? I wonder what I wish I didn't know then, what I know now. And I honestly have to say kind of no to either. I just, I think Johnson Wales has evolved over the years. I mean, I think the students come out far smarter than I did, with, a better facility to work in, all of those great things. But, I'm going to have to say no to both. There's nothing I wish I would have known then that I know now.
That's a valid answer.
Yeah.
And if it does sound like a country song, that's because I wrote the question and sort of my ilk. Nancy, something you wish you would have known or are glad that now that you didn't know?
No, I'm gonna have to stick with Houston on this one. I'm gonna have to say no to both. I am happy the way things have turned out for me, because the saying, God laughs when you make plans, that's definitely true. How many times did I not wish I knew something different, or I wish I could have done something different, or I wish I would have gone a different path or whatever. But at the same time, at the end of the day, no, I'm happy the way things are. If I would have gone a different way, I wouldn't be in the situation that I'm in right now. I wouldn't be in the position that I am right now, where I'm happily helping run my parents' business, taking it where it's at right now and going in the direction that we're going. We have managers that have known me since I was 5 years old, and I'm sorry if I get teary-eyed. And one of them just retired on Tuesday, and he came from Austin to Dallas to thank us. And he said something that resonated with all of us, and it's that he's from Mexico. He came from Mexico with his wife. And he said, thank you to my parents for giving him a little taste of what the American dream is. And so if my parents touched him, I can only imagine however many lives they're touching now with all the employees that we have and the future ones that we'll have. And so I'm good the way that we are. And I hope that I can continue doing that for everybody. And it's sad, but I'm very happy. I'm very happy with everything is. Yeah.
That's great. So, and actually, and this is how busy our panel is. Michael was actually managing a board meeting while he was on the panel, and so he's had to step away to answer a board meeting question, and so he's not going to get to answer my last question unless he's right back there. Michael, that was great timing. And I don't know if you heard the other panelists' answers, but it might be a little bit like cheating if you did hear their answers. So I'll just pose that question to you really quickly, Michael, and that is, as a JWU student, is there something you wish you would have known about the world, or something that you are glad you didn't know?
I guess I'm glad I didn't really fully realize how hard it would be, because then maybe I wouldn't have done it. But I think, is there something that I wish I wouldn't have known? I think being naive is good. I think that level of mystery and uncertainty is a great position to be in. Looking back, being in the position I'm blessed to be in today, I think at times I look at things and I'm a little more hesitant because I've had certain things happen. And I think when you're younger and you're, coming out of college, you have a lot more just energy, really creative ideas, really, kind of that super open-mindedness that, you're not, corrupted's not the right word that I'm looking for, but
It's an
you
okay
don't
word.
you don't have this kind of, perception of, oh, I don't like this, or I love this, or I want to do this and all these things. You're much more flexible, you're much more open. And I think when you're able to keep that level of mindset, you're going to find yourself in the things that you really love to do that maybe you had no idea about before. And I think for me, that was something that was really important. Was I didn't want to be kind of set in my way and steered in a direction. And I encourage everybody to, kind of be really open-mindedness. Because I think there's so much in the world that if you think you want to do A, B, or C, I don't think you're being fair to yourself, because I think it's really tough to know that that's what you want to do when you've never really done it. So touch and feel a little, explore. And somebody like myself, as I said, I loved food. When I came to Johnson & Wales, I thought I was going to be this, wonder chef, and, I was going to be the next Thomas Keller, and I was going to have this incredible restaurant, and so on and so forth. And, here I am today. I don't work in restaurants. I work in industrial production. It's just, the total opposite, right? But for me, it's food, and at the root, food was what I loved. Sure. And, I think for me, that was really important, to just keep my eyes and mind really open to the world. And I would encourage everybody to try and take a similar perspective.
And we certainly do that with our students, especially this generation, who have maybe gone away a little bit from thinking or understanding college as a time to explore. I think they come to us now a little more boxed in than they might have 15, 20 years ago, with the idea that there is A, B, or C that they're going to end up doing. And we really try to shake them loose of that take this as an opportunity to explore and to touch and feel. So hopefully that gets across. We do have an audience question, and I'll pose it to all of you. And actually, we'll start with Michael. Post-COVID, is there one particular technology that is now most beneficial to your current operation? So some piece of technology that you adopted probably during the pandemic that now is really key to how you're operating.
A piece of technology. Yes and no. I mean, I think, shockingly, I think one of the nicest things that changed, well, it's the nicest, but it's also a little bit painful, is the whole, Zoom and the way the world has changed communicating. I mean, for me, prior to COVID, I used to fly every other day, every third day for years and years and years. And yeah, I mean, I love being in person, but, I think for me, the way that the communication and processes of communication has changed, I think, is probably the biggest one. We've certainly implemented, tons more of, predictive analytics and, machine learning and, algorithms that, certainly help with order flow and, purchase order patterns and, predicting when we need to buy more goods based on supply chain changes and things. And that's all great. And, there's a lot of incredible technology for much cheaper prices than ever before. But I think communication is really the big one that's changed, is kind of, and it's twofold. I think from a technology standpoint, it's great that the communication flow and everything's changed, but I've also certainly noticed a major difference when I do meet with people in person. I think they really struggle to stay focused like they used to. Those hour meetings are very different than they used to, right? Everybody's kind of checking their phones, and it's definitely very different than it used to be. So for me, I think the number one really is communication. And I think there's just so many ways, right? Like we all have to use Zoom, Microsoft Teams, WebEx, like Blue Jeans. There's like 10 different of the same platform that you use, right? And you're kind of touching and it's like Zoom. It was bought by Verizon, actually.
Oh. So my answer to this question would be exactly the same as yours, Michael. I don't know that I used Zoom, even as an educator, before the onset of the pandemic at all. It defines my day now.
Oh yeah, even just the chat functionality, like even things like Slack. Prior to COVID, like Slack was a really cool product, but like those things, to get whether it's your internal employees to use them, that was always a challenge. Everybody just wanted to email each other, and it's just not great technology, in my opinion.
Sure.
And then, kind of external, right? Everybody's using these kind of, platforms, or probably, I guess the other one besides communication that I think was a massive integrator for us was we use a software called monday.com. It's like a project management tool. So like Trello is similar, Asana is similar. And I think in a way, it's kind of like a glorified Excel, in terms of user interface, but things like that have really changed how we operate our business. And, for us, the Monday platform costs about $1,500 a year. And 30 of my employees are on it doing everything from data records of food safety and production runs and lab and law coding, all the way to just, project management or something in artwork. So,
Great.
Those kind of things between the communication channels, and I guess that kind of ties into, a project management type, application.
Sure.
I think those kind of things are really where the future is heading. And I think the biggest thing I noticed with it is the people that wanted to just email in the past or pick up the phone and call in the past, the interfaces and the way it's designed for users, it's like an iPhone. It's very user friendly like that, right? These companies realize that they need to have that to onboard the right type of users quickly. Before COVID, it wasn't like that. It was like, we're going to demo it and do the Zoom and do these videos and do all this stuff before you could even touch and feel it and then get it out to your team and deploy it. Now it's kind of like, we made a decision and we cut over and we're like, all right, we're going to be on Zoom and we're going to be on Monday. And like a week later, I'm like, this is how it is now, guys. Like, if you're not using it, let me know what the problem is, and we're going to help you, get everybody up to speed as quickly as possible. So, we use a lot of technology for us. I see a question here. Like, do you see specific communicate to guests, employees, vendors? Yeah. Zoom's really big, those kind of products. Project management is huge across a lot of my friends' networks, depending on what you're using. ERP systems have become kind of the way of accounting more in the industrial side of kind of business. Enterprise resource and planning, for those that don't know, it manages for us inventory, work orders, purchase orders, sales orders, CRM data, pretty much everything lives in that hub. And I guess that's the biggest thing I've noticed with technology. That funnel has really integrated down where you can have singular touch points and not have to have, 50 solutions anymore. You can have 5 really healthy ones.
You're absolutely right. Houston, any key technology outcomes for you?
Technology is kind of a double-edged sword, right? It's like the phone. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened to man. In some respects, people use it to order things, pay for things, but we can't keep our employees off the phone when they're working, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword. We employ a lot of different software programs within the organization, right? And they all save time, but it's when something all of a sudden doesn't work that panic starts to set in like nobody's business, right? It was like, because when it was paper before, it was okay, but now it's like that kind of technology. Thanks to our CFO, for example, using some of Microsoft's, back-end platforms, has been able to develop reporting and a dashboard for us that I never would have imagined before. That is incredibly useful, that we couldn't find off the shelf, and we can easily modify it. So it's a double-edged sword. I don't think we're going to have any robotics in our bakery anytime soon. I know for nationwide shipping, we're putting in a machine that will actually decorate, mid-fill and ice the cakes and do everything, but we still have to package the cakes, right? And that isn't something of scale that I can put into each of my bakeries for financial reasons, let alone space reasons. So we may not have robots, but I think we'll have more machines doing more things for us as we evolve as a business.
Sure. Nancy, actually, to close out, I'm going to ask you a different question, the final question that came in from the audience, and that is, talking to younger alums who've only been out in the world 5 or 6 years, how do they stand out to employers and otherwise, given the small amount of experience they may have, especially because of the pandemic where they weren't able to work? How do they stand out?
Okay. Keep your head down. Don't get discouraged. Continue working hard. Roll up your sleeves and take everything you can. Have patience. Have grace. It's going to take time. You want to shine now. If you're not shining now, it's for a reason. It goes back to the question that Jason asked us. What do you wish you knew then? What do you wish you didn't know? Just take time. It takes time. Right now, you're competing with a lot of things that are going on. And like Michael said, everything is moving so fast. Your time will come. I promise it will. It took a lot for me to get where I am now, to prove to my parents that I can handle more responsibility. And I still am. And working with parents is really hard. Patience, grace, and time.
I love that word grace. We had Chef Eric Haugen on campus yesterday speaking with students, and a question like this came up, and one of the answers was, there's someone always watching you, whether you know it or not, and how you react under pressure when you're given additional responsibilities. I think grace is a really, really good term for that, for what people want to see in young employees when they're testing them a little bit and wanting to maybe move them to the next step.
I'll just chime in on those two points actually, because I think they're awesome. I think to your point of, I was fortunate. I grew up playing soccer. I played soccer at Johnson Wales for 2 years prior to having an injury. And I think, that team mentality is really kind of important in that sense. Whether you're at work, whether you're at a corporate function, whether you're just out with your friends at night, you need to kind of remember, just as a pro athlete would, that you're kind of carrying that logo or carrying that, message, right? And it's not just if you do something, maybe that's not the smartest. It's not just a reflection on you. It could come back to the employer and everything else. And, it kind of reciprocates both ways, right? Both, good and bad in that sense. So I think always kind of keeping in my mind, having played sports, right? I was always like, I never wanted to do something that I thought was going to jeopardize kind of the greater good. And it's kind of the reason that maybe I'm a little quiet on social media. There are a bunch of topics I would love to kind of comment on a little further, but the reality is it's a fine line balance, and you need to really think about the things you're doing and saying nowadays, because everything is so incredibly interconnected and so much more than I think people realize. And I guess a quick example of that is I was scrolling through Twitter this morning, and I saw this this algorithmic bot that was created by somebody. And all you have to do is grab your Instagram picture, put it in that bot, and it's a free tool that will search cameras around the world, and it finds the picture or video of you taking that picture of somebody else, right? And it's free. I mean, I was like, no, this can't be real. I tested it. I was like, oh my God, this is like not healthy, right? And, so to your point of just always being conscious of your surroundings and who you are and what you're doing, you never know what can get created. And to Nancy's point, I think there's a lot of perception that everything should happen so quickly, and it should just be kind of, oh, I want to go build this business and, boom, I'm going to go raise this money and I'm going to be like the next best thing. Right. And, the reality is, even for somebody like myself, it's time in the game, and that's a big piece of it. People think it's just like, oh, it happens so fast. Like somebody like myself, it took me years and years and years before it really started to get that compounding effect and really start to then kind of get on that, vertical takeoff. But the first 5, 6, 7 years, it was not pretty. I mean, I was flying nonstop. I was staying in, the cheapest hotels because I had no money. I had absolutely none. I was staying in like La Quinta's for $50 a night, and I have, hundreds of nights booked with them and things. And, I did what I had to do, but I just think there's a misunderstanding sometimes about the time that it takes to accomplish something. And often I find that people who want to build businesses and do these things, they want to rush it, and it's not worth it. It's not worth trying to rush it. It will come by time in the game more than anything else. Money doesn't solve it. I've watched hundreds of millions of dollars from friends that have raised VC funding just be lit right on fire, because money is not the tool. Time is, more than anything else, more often. So don't get discouraged in the short term when things aren't immediately like a rocket ship, because it just needs some time to cultivate the process. And you'd be surprised when you look back in a year from that point or 2 years, how different things can really be by keeping your head down, staying focused, and allowing things to cultivate a little bit more naturally than trying to force it immediately.
Yeah.
That's all really great advice. And I certainly appreciate all of your insights to all of our panelists. And I'd actually like to now bring on Liza Gentile, the director of our alumni relations, to close out the program for this morning. But thank you to Nancy, Houston, and Michael. Liza?
Thank you so much, Dean Evans, and thank you to all of our alumni for such an inspiring and informative discussion. You all have tremendous responsibilities, and we're grateful to all of you for taking the time to share your knowledge with your fellow alumni and our students. Also, thank you to all of our alumni attendees for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed hearing from your fellow alums. JWU's College of Food Innovation and Technology continues to provide a truly unique and exceptional education that prepares our students for future success. This experience is made possible by the generous support of our loyal donors and gifts of all sizes combined to have an impact on our students that is truly powerful. As an alumni donor, your gift also demonstrates your investment in our mission, which can inspire additional support from other members of the JWU community, as well as corporate donors and foundations. You can make a gift by clicking the link in the chat window. Thank you in advance for your support. I also encourage you to attend our last alumni event of the year, Pizza Quest, Chef Peter Reinhardt's never-ending search for the perfect pizza, on December 14th. You can register at alumni.jwu.edu. Thank you again for your attendance today, and I wish you a wonderful rest of the day.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.